Assalamu alaikum ji. Welcome back to an episode of Kahe, Kazi. My guest today was Samar Naqvi. Samar Naqvi is the CEO of the Karachi Down Syndrome Program, an organization that is foremost in providing care, support, education for people with Down syndromes and their families. We get to speaking about the cognitive capital that is required to do this work, about being a woman and a CEO in a patriarchal and male-dominated society, about what it takes to run a non-for-profit organization, about what it is to have a child with Down syndrome, what it is to live with Down syndrome and flourish with Down syndrome, and about what has informed her decision to work in this industry. Enjoy. Three, two, one. Samar Naqvi. How are you doing, Samar?
I'm doing well.
Okay, so we were talking about your outfit, which is quite cool, and then we also were speaking about productivizing yourself. I think these days you can't really do without having some kind of clout portfolio on the social medias. I think lazmi hai.
Lazmi hai.
लाजमी है लेकिन आपने जो है okay, so because you insisted, let's just talk about this first.
Yes.
The Karachi Down Syndrome Program Carnival is happening this Sunday.
That's right.
This Sunday meaning आज जो है Thursday and this is the 17th of March. तो Sunday को क्या हो जाएगा? 20th of March. 20th of March. This podcast is going to come out way later.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And when we know this, but tell me how you got involved with this. Let's start there.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind, even if it comes out later, for people who are watching or listening, KDSP, Karachi Down Syndrome Program, welcomes people from all walks of life. Come in, learn about the cause, learn about children with Down syndrome, how they develop, get to know us as well. We're a very hardworking young team that, and we require support and help all the time. So for all of you watching, come visit us, get in touch, and create more inclusion in society.
What is your role in the program?
So I am the CEO at Karachi Down Syndrome Program.
Okay, wonderful. Because but you're also educated in therapy and stuff, right?
That's right.
You're also registered. You could take clients. You're also a therapist, right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's the introduction. Good. Now we can talk about. Why don't we start with you explaining to me and everyone else what Down syndrome is? लेकिन बहुत बिल्कुल सिंधी में ऐसे नहीं कि just use as colloquial definition.
बिल्कुल. I'll explain it that way. So हर इंसान का जो body होती है ना, it's made of billions and billions of cells, and हर cell की जो composition होती है, it's 23 pairs of chromosomes.
Okay.
When the 21st pair has a full or partial extra copy,
okay,
it results in Down syndrome.
Okay.
So every 1 in 700 babies will be born with Down syndrome, and it is mostly randomly occurring.
Okay. No hereditary नहीं होता है.
It is a genetic condition. Only 4% of the types of Down syndrome are hereditary.
Okay.
So there's 3 types of Down syndrome. I don't want to get into that because
Please
that's a lot.
Please do. No,
shall
please
I?
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 3 types of Down syndrome.
Okay.
The most prevalent one is called Trisomy 21.
Okay.
And it's called Trisomy 21 because it's the 21st pair that has a third copy. Instead of 2 copies, it has a third copy.
And that's not hereditary at all.
That is not. And that's 96% of the cases of Down syndrome.
Okay.
So 1 in 700 babies जो born होते हैं, उसमें 96% of them are randomly occurring.
Okay.
The second type of Down syndrome is called translocation, which is 4%. That is the hereditary one.
Okay.
ठीक है. Or the third type is mosaic, and that's 1%. So different उसमें एक जगह से like 21st से different chromosome में attach हो जाता है, so different types, but most prevalent type is trisomy 21, which is why it's also interchangeably used with Down syndrome. So Down syndrome को trisomy 21 भी कहते हैं.
And
और क्यों कहते हैं ये भी important है.
But you're born with it, right? I just want to, you can develop this later in life.
No, no, it is a genetic condition, not a disease.
No.
A genetic condition. You're born with it.
Yes.
और एक ये मैं इसलिए mention करना चाह रही हूँ Down syndrome, because the word down has a lot of negative connotation. So automatically people just assume that individuals with Down syndrome are going to be down in some way, like not at par at a certain level. It's actually called Down syndrome because it was named after the doctor who diagnosed the condition.
Okay.
उनका नाम था Langdon Down. तो उनके नाम पे पड़ गया डाउन सिंड्रोम एंड उसकी वजह से बड़ा गड़बड़
अल्लाह रहम करे. But if anything, aren't they superhuman, if anything? Like if I have 24 chromosomes, you said? 23 chromosomes. कितने बोले आपने?
23 chromosomes की सबके अंदर
कॉपी होती है और उन सब के दो होते हैं, पेयर्स होते हैं ना? इनका एक अगर एक्स्ट्रा है, so they at least they have that one thing that's more than me, no?
Yes, it is actually something more than something less.
It's
a different way to look at it. But I mean, having said that, children with Down syndrome, what happens? I mean, like it's also important to know what is Down syndrome, what happens when somebody is born with Down syndrome. What does it mean to live with Down syndrome?
Sure.
So it is and it's classified under the intellectual disability ambit. It results in certain developmental and intellectual delays. And some very typical facial features, which is why individuals with Down syndrome are easily recognizable.
Sure.
There is no difference between a typically developing individual and an individual with Down syndrome in terms of socio-emotional development, which means they have the similar aspirations, fears, dreams. They develop socially the same way.
Okay.
Which means that they're often treated as children even when they grow up. Okay. But it's one of the ways we look at disability in our culture, in our context as well.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, like they develop the same as typically developing individuals in terms of their socio-emotional development, but there are intellectual and developmental delays, which means that individuals with Down syndrome will have hypotonia, which is low muscle tone.
Okay.
So low muscle tone का मतलब ये है कि आपको fine motor, gross motor skills के अंदर थोड़ी सी difficulty होगी. So walking milestones, sitting milestones, वो थोड़े delayed होते हैं.
Delayed होते हैं meaning they will reach it.
They will reach it given the right intervention at the right time. So the first 1,000 days of the life of an individual with Down syndrome are extremely crucial. Crucial.
Okay.
So हम अगर early intervention, which means occupational speech, physical therapy, provided in those first 1,000 days, the first 3 years, their outcomes are significantly improved, which means that they're a very wholesome part of an inclusive society. That they're studying in the mainstream with typically developing children. They're participating in all sorts of activities as well. लेकिन ये जो काम है ना, ये पहले 1000 दिन वाला, ये बहुत crucial है. और अब मैं आ रही हूँ कराची डाउन सिंड्रोम प्रोग्राम की जब ये इंसेप्शन हुआ इसका. This is back in 2014 when this young couple, Ali and Farzeen are their names, and they Alawalas, so they had their first child, and her name's Alea. Alea is 11 years old, and Alea has Down syndrome.
Okay.
And when she was born in 2011, they went through very unnecessary hassle. Even though they were a well-resourced family, they were educated abroad, everything, but they couldn't find the right sort of support here. Hospital में पहली चीज़ जो सुनने को मिलती है वो होती है I'm sorry as opposed to congratulations you have a baby.
Yeah, you have a baby.
Right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
instead they have to listen to I'm sorry her life is not worth fighting for. You might want to give up because she was when she was born she underwent like some health complications as well.
Imagine telling a mother that.
Oh my goodness, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking.
Imagine telling a mother that.
We have so many such families who've
Yeah.
experienced that, and unfortunately, to date, they experience it. Despite the creation of this real full support group in the shape of KDSP, but at least now they have a place to go.
Yeah.
So when they had Alea, that's when they eventually like wrapped up and left the country so that they could get her early intervention elsewhere because there was nothing here that they could find.
Sorry.
When they got out of the hospital, it was a bigger trauma because they couldn't find a space to go to. कहाँ पे जाएं, कहाँ से services लें?
And the cultural imperatives also, na? कि खुदा का कहर है and all those things, you know, किसी के आपने कुछ किया होगा, किसी को आपने अजियत दी होगी. It's absolutely ridiculous what people say. It's truly heartbreaking. Just a small tangent here. My mom actually worked in a therapeutic setting. So there was a young couple, much like Ali and Farzeen, and they came to, you know, get their child checked. And my mom wasn't the one diagnosing them or anything like that, but she was there. And when these parents were told कि आपके बच्चे को शायद, because like you said, there's cognitive delays and all those things, तो पता पड़ जाता है, and there's significant overt features, ना उनकी physicality एक तरीके से develop होती है, facial features and all those things. The father right then said, I'm going to kill myself. That's the culture we live in, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just, and so, you know, it really is so important, this work that you do.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry for making that heavy. But so they wrapped up because there was nothing here, and they come out of the clinic and nothing here.
Okay, so you know, to avoid such stories and like to make sure that no other family had to go through what they went through, they came back 3 years later and started up KDSP, which is the Karachi Down Syndrome Program.
Okay.
And they tell us that you know, they first billboard campaign कर रहे थे, first awareness campaign कर रहे थे. World Down Syndrome Day was around the corner. So 21st of March is World Down Syndrome Day. It's 21st of March because 21 pair के अंदर
that's beautiful.
three copies होती है ना. So that's why the date is significant too.
Yeah.
So that's when they were doing the first campaign. They नहीं us Karachi Down Syndrome Program. Us now. So we were doing our first billboard campaign, and we had like friends because ये IBA के पढ़े हुए थे. So they had like a couple of friends who were working at Unilever, etc. So they helped us out with like, you know, free sort of awareness campaign की चीजें. Very interesting. 10 billboard मिले throughout the city.
Wow.
कि यहाँ पे अपने families अपने बच्चों के साथ इनकी pictures लगाएंगे और welcome करेंगे. आ जाओ, सब families आएं, मिल के we're going to start out a support group and then help more and more. जो भी services चाहिए होंगे, we'll slowly start them up and help everyone out. 10 free, 7 families सामने आई. 10 families नहीं मिली. Only 7 were ready to put their child's picture up with them on those billboards. Today, I tell you, 8 years down the line, we have 1,400 families.
Alhamdulillah.
And we have to turn the families down sometimes because sorry, आपके बच्चे की इस collateral में तस्वीरें नहीं आ सकती, next वाले में आएगी because already इतनी wait list है, इतनी बड़ी line है. So now, like all of a sudden, they're not just like owning their children with Down syndrome, accepting them fully, but they're also now their biggest advocates. And I think that's what it takes, right?
I think there's just so much shame. Again, shame and guilt that is tethered to this stuff for absolutely no reason that I can understand, you know. And just to think about that, कि billboard वैसे ही मिलना एक बहुत, मतलब, it's a very difficult thing. Billboards don't just come by, right? And then to have how many? So 7 families came forward, and it was mass reach, आप लोगों ने हर किसी को बोला, there was a mass invitation.
राइट
Yeah.
बिल्कुल
ऐसा
बिल्कुल हर जगह था इनविटेशन. जब वो 7 families के लगे ना, that's when people started like eventually reaching out because they identified the features and then more and more families got involved. And a very interesting story ये भी है कि जो इनकी like one of their friends who was helping them out with this campaign at Unilever, she was at that point in time expecting.
Okay, wow.
And would you believe it?
I wouldn't. Are you going to tell me?
Yes.
Yes.
Her first child, when he was born, he has Down syndrome. And it's such a weird coincidence too, because it is, the prevalence is 1 in 700. और जब आप छोटे होते हो ना, because ये लोग they were what 24, 25ish. जब छोटे होते हो तो prevalence बिल्कुल वो नहीं होती. So आहिस्ता आहिस्ता with the mother's age, the probability of having a child with Down syndrome increases, right?
Okay.
So at age 24, 25, it's like 1 in 1500 की possibility. And उसमें से the one friend who was helping out, her child was born with Down syndrome. She was helping out, and little did she know that the very organization that she was helping set up would be the place where her child would get all the services that he required.
And it's such a powerful story also because maybe somewhere in her mind, she did think, ki yaar, what if this was my kid? You know, and that's so powerful. Made it on goosebumps.
I know. It's just like, it's such a beautiful story.
Nah.
Like, I feel it's almost like curated by God.
Sure. But exactly, right? Like sometimes you're just like, Alhamdulillah, okay, jo bhi raaz hai, these are really powerful.
Incredible. It's
Alhamdulillah.
incredible.
So 8 years down the line, right? How's the work been? Like for the organization in terms of operating in this city, in this culture, jahan pe phir bhi it's not understood to be a positive thing.
It's not.
Right?
It's not.
And you can't really make the case to certain people, ki yaar, it's all right, this child is still worth saving, when, you know, we're a prodigy crazed society. We want kids to be, you know, we live vicariously through our kids. We want them to be perfect in every way, shape or form.
Sure.
And we want to have lots, right?
Sure.
So agar ek ko Down syndrome ho bhi kya,
Right.
we'll just have more.
Yeah.
You know, in a society like that, और ये तो सिर्फ मैंने surface level की बातें की हैं, फिर also the other logistical stuff and all that stuff that goes with operating in the city.
Yeah.
What's that been like? Writ large, like tell me शुरू से.
So KDSP की भी ना progress बड़ी organic हुई है. तो slowly हुआ है. It's never been you know, एकदम से massive amount of parents reaching out and we don't know what to do because capacity नहीं हो.
Okay.
अब ये हमारा over the years, ये 7 से जो 1400 हुआ है ना, ये over the years naturally growth की वजह से हुआ है. The deal is that service providers here are also very limited because when a child with special needs is born or when a child has Down syndrome, there are certain needs that they have that mean additional resources that the family has to put in as well.
Elucidate needs?
So for example, every 1 in 2 children with Down syndrome will be born with a congenital heart condition.
Allah raham kare.
Easily curable if timely procedure हो जाए. Recognize हो जाए, identify हो जाए और timely procedure हो जाए. And so that's you know, that's an expense. There, because hypotonia होता है, because low muscle tone होती है, because speech delayed होती है, primarily because, you know, another something about children with Down syndrome, individuals with Down syndrome, is that their receptive language develops much earlier than their expressive language.
Okay, so they can understand you.
They can understand, but the speech comes a little later because tongue is also a muscle.
Okay.
So उसके ऊपर भी काम करना होता है.
Right.
तो speech therapy हो रही होती है शुरू से 0 age से.
Okay.
होता ये कि जब उनकी, और अक्सर ये भी होता है, तो ये जो सारे misconceptions है ना, like I want to talk about those too because oftentimes special needs are associated with behavioral challenges, right? And this is an important thing to know कि जब receptive language अगर मेरी develop हो गई और मेरी expressive language develop नहीं हुई, मुझे पानी चाहिए. मैं बताने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ, मुझसे तो नहीं बताया जा रहा, चाहिए तो मुझे पानी. अगर मैं बोल ना पाई कि मुझे पानी चाहिए, मैं एंड में जाके अपना सर दीवार पे मारूंगी क्योंकि मेरे को समझ नहीं रहा. सो प्रॉब्लम इधर नहीं है, प्रॉब्लम हमारी तरफ है possibly, where we have a difficult time understanding and providing the tools through which they can express to.
Sure.
So if the verbal language doesn't develop, doesn't mean that there is no way they can express themselves. Teach sign language.
Sign language, sure.
So oftentimes, kids with Down syndrome are going to have a lot of gestures. They're very expressive in terms of their gestures, the way they can communicate then to the world. And agar you do that, then they're the cause for presenting behavioral challenges जो लोगों को लगता है, लोगों की नज़र में नज़र आ रहा है कि behavioral challenges हैं, वो है नहीं, वो आप understand तो करो कि क्यों हो रहा है.
Sure, what's the root of them? Even if it's a behavioral issue, it could be, it's not a challenge, but maybe it's an issue, right? If for society, because they're not behaving like everyone else does.
Right.
Because everyone should behave the same way.
Yeah.
Homogeneous society.
Exactly.
Right? But उसमें भी वही आप बोल रहे हो कि just maybe for a minute just think about why they're behaving this way. You know, if they're getting upset, agitated, there must be a reason. You know, in therapy you're taught all the time, in philosophy you're taught all the time that everything, you know, happens for a reason. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so, it's such a vast subject, na? It's
It
so
is
big.
what you just said. I think it's just अभी हम जो नहीं सीखते हैं अपनी पढ़ाई में भी, we're statistically like trained to remove the outliers.
Yeah.
You know how we create that line of best fit?
Yeah.
तो सारे स्कैटर प्लॉट अगर बनाते हैं उसके बाद लाइन एक बेस्ट फिट
median
आता है,
line.
मीडियन लाइन. तो उसमें आप ऊपर भी नीचे भी जो आउटलायर्स है ना उनको रिमूव करते हैं. बट आउटलायर्स आर द ब्यूटी ऑफ सोसाइटी.
Outliers is what pushes us forward.
ऑफ कोर्स.
नहीं तो हम फंसे हुए थे कहीं.
और आउटलायर्स में बाय द वे गिफ्टेड इंडिविजुअल्स भी होते हैं.
हाँ, जाहिर है.
All the outliers are the gifted. They are the ones like changing the world.
Of course.
In fact, like एक कोई स्टडी हुई थी, बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है ये भी, मुझे हमेशा मैं बात करती हूँ उसके बारे में. लेकिन you know the autism spectrum disorder?
Yeah.
They kind of studied a couple of geniuses in the world.
Yeah.
And they क्योंकि उस ज़माने में ASD जो था, ऑटिज्म स्पेक्ट्रम डिसऑर्डर, वो कभी डायग्नोज नहीं हुआ था.
नहीं.
तो कहते हैं जब पढ़े ना, उनके अंदर जो ट्रेड्स थे जीनियसेस के अंदर, वो काफी ASD वाले थे, ऑटिज्म स्पेक्ट्रम. So there might be that the gifted individuals in the world were ones with disabilities, ones that were not the norm, ones that were removed.
देखो मेरी बात सुनो ना, anyone who reaches that level of excellence, they're not normal, right? क्योंकि normal बंदा होता है ना, उसको आप you know give them steady food and sex and they don't want to pursue anything. It is the abnormal, or whatever you want to call them. Abnormal also is a negative word. Whatever you want to call them, they're a little left or right of normal. And that's when they do. That's when
Correct.
they, you know, develop the cure for cancer. That's when they develop the nuclear bomb. That's when they develop whatever machinery, the printing press. These people were not normal.
Sure.
Right. So ये तो no one can convince me like no ये सब normal होते हैं. अच्छा ये हुआ है कि अब ऑटिज्म स्पेक्ट्रम, उसको स्पेक्ट्रम कर दिया है, उससे पहले सिर्फ ऑटिज्म होता. तो यू वांट टू टॉक अबाउट दैट फॉर अ लिटिल बिट एज वेल. ऑटिज्म क्या होता है?
श्योर. एक ये भी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है बिफोर आई गेट इनटू दैट. द वर्ड नॉर्मल.
Sure.
Because we very often use it because how else do we describe able-bodied individuals, or how else do we describe typical individuals? But just by naturally, when you said this, you caught this while you were speaking, just by saying normal, we're kind of implying an abnormal as well.
Okay.
Something that is not normal. And abnormality and other such words have gotten such a bad negative connotation attached to them now, that we're kind of at the same time working through words to make sure that they're communicated in such a way where it's not offensive, it's not something that carries negative connotation. I kind of sometimes am very wary and cautious of getting into the words kind of argument as well, because जब वहाँ पे जाते हैं ना तो argument अक्सर वहीं फंस जाती है.
Arguments अक्सर deteriorate when you cannot get past the semantics. So any argument, so मेरी PhD होनी थी एक, मैं समर नकवी आपको बताता चलूँ, लेकिन वो नहीं हुई. But it was going to be in the philosophy of language, right? And most arguments you will find will deteriorate if we cannot quickly, and by quickly I mean in the first like 5 to 10 minutes agree on certain words meaning certain things. अगर हम word के parameter, एक लफ्ज़ है normal के अगर हम parameters change करते रहेंगे ना, तो आप 2 घंटे निकाल लो, 3 घंटे निकालो, we won't get anywhere. No conversation will happen.
For
right?
sure.
So to that end, normal here does not merit a badge or a medal. Normal just means jo bhi average hai, and everything else is not negative, it's just not that. Right?
Precisely.
So but you're absolutely right. ये अगर आप in loves को, because words have so much power ना,
Of course.
तो उनको अगर आप जितना पावर उनके में ऑलरेडी है, उसके बाद उनको आप ये भी साथ साथ में करोगे कि they're relative. Words are, you know, context में change हो जाते हैं, all those things. You have to hold them constant at some point. नहीं तो बहुत dangerous हो जाता है. आप you would get nothing done. You know, we can argue normal all day. You know, what's normal? I don't know what normal is.
Yeah, because the majority defines what normal is, right?
Sure.
Majority creates the world. Majority, अगर you know things जो अब आ गई हैं एक्सेप्टेंस के पैरामीटर्स के अंदर, बिकॉज वो भी अब आहिस्ता आहिस्ता मेजॉरिटी हो रही है ना. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आई साइट. सो अगर आई साइट वीक ग्लासेस ना होती, सो एवरीबडी विद वीक आई साइट, नियर साइटेड, फार साइटेड, अगर कभी इन्वेंशन ही ना होता करेक्टिव स्पेक्टिकल्स का या ग्लेंसेस का, व्हाटएवर इट टेक्स, then those people would possibly be very, very limited.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, and would potentially have a disability.
Sure.
They won't be able to.
Technically, it is a disability, na?
Of course.
Technically, it still is, na?
But अब वो नॉर्मल के पैरामीटर्स में आ गई है ना, वो क्योंकि मेजॉरिटी होती जा रही है. लाइक लोग हैं जो हैं, करेक्टिव चीज़ भी आ गई है. You go enter into a world where people are speaking sign language.
सही.
They are perfectly comfortable. Deaf individuals speaking sign language.
Yeah.
Perfectly okay.
Yeah.
हम फंस जाएंगे वहाँ पे.
जाहिर है.
हमें नहीं आएगी साइन लैंग्वेज, हम स्ट्रगल करेंगे, तो फिर उधर कौन नॉर्मल हुआ.
सही. So I think यहाँ पे जो है ना एक statistical distinction होती है based upon which we're like what's normal and what's, you know, not normal. Do you feel कि ऐसा कभी भी हो जाएगा? You still have to tell us what autism is.
Yeah,
roughly. मतलब generally sort of because these things also people just don't know. Na? Down syndrome also people hear that, but more often than not it's used as an insult, right? It's not. No one understands, like not no one, but people don't understand generally what it means. It's not part of the colloquial discourse.
Correct.
Same thing with autism. They don't understand what it is.
Correct.
Right? Autism, from my understanding, is a learning disability. Is that fair?
So it's more so social, psychological, psychosocial almost.
Okay.
Because individuals with on the spectrum can have intellect की different, again, varying in a scale.
Right.
लेकिन autism की prevalence is 1 in 50.
Okay.
And it is a developmental disorder. So you kind of figure out whether somebody has autism or not after a certain stage, after a certain age, if they're like having certain repeated movements.
Okay.
There's some typical kind of features, like eye contact is sometimes difficult. They're going to have like self-soothing behavior.
Okay.
So you're going to often identify individuals
like
with
clicking
autism.
A pen constantly,
clicking a pen constantly,
like
moving back and forth, or and often they strike themselves. So there's but it's again a part of their soothing kind of mechanism.
Sure.
I think autism के अंदर भी ना एक बड़ी movement आई और बहुत ज़्यादा traction मिली इसको when Sesame Street के अंदर एक character introduce हुई, Julia.
Okay.
And Julia has autism. So children kind of learned as to what it's like to have somebody with on the spectrum around and how to be around Julia as well. It was very, very beautiful. I think mainstream के अंदर जब ऐसी inclusion आ जाती है ना, तो then naturally children learn. और बच्चे difference देखते नहीं हैं.
ना.
बच्चे नहीं देखते difference. हम देखते हैं difference, हम सिखाते हैं difference देखना. मैं एक बड़ा ज़बरदस्त किस्म की एक वीडियो है जिसके अंदर there's 2 rooms that are open from both sides, and एक room के अंदर एक बच्चा बैठा हुआ है जिसको Down syndrome है. Like room is decked up tightly, and the other room is decked up and has multiple toys in it, like all sorts of toys. They bring in 2-3-year-olds, toddlers who are typically developing. Okay. They bring in those and they say, which room would you want to go through? and all of them both they look at both rooms and they head straight towards the room with the child with Down syndrome.
Of course.
Because they want to play with them.
Yeah.
You take slightly older children, like 8, 9, 10-year-olds,
Yeah.
typically developing. They come there, you ask them, which room do you want to go to? And they head towards the room with the toys.
Of course.
Because that's when they start seeing the difference. Because they see that this child is different.
That, and also they're at that, developmentally speaking, they're at that level where matlab, they're starting to develop a sense of self. Right? So वहाँ से भी एक चीज़ हो जाती है कि ये मैं हूँ, तो ये जो है, ये जो बच्चा है, this is something else. Something else I don't want. I want toys. I want this stuff. So there's...
Yeah, I mean, sure, that. And I also think there is a little bit to do with us. How mainstream media can there be a type of individuals, and like the messaging, the subtle messaging that these kids get as well. Or also when they've not grown up with somebody who looks different, then they wouldn't even know. Like we never grew up with when we were in school, college, I can't remember a single person with a disability, any form of disability in our classrooms.
Yeah.
Why? 15% of the world's population are individuals with disability. How is it, if we're like a sample, how is it that we didn't have any individuals with disabilities in our classrooms? How?
Pakistan की अगर आप बात कर रहे हो, is because if a child with a disability is born, more often than not, like I said, it's understood to be khuda ka keher or something of that sort, and then they are hidden because it's shame. You know, family ka shame hai. Chupa lo na, school bhejo and all those things.
Do you know about the census?
What about the census?
The population census. Like what you're saying is precisely right. It is छुपाने वाली चीज़, acceptance ही नहीं है कि पता ही नहीं है कि, और अक्सर ना पता होने वाली चीज़ भी, right? 1998 में पाकिस्तान का जो population census हुआ, उसमें disability की population आई थी कोई 3% के करीब.
Okay.
3.5%.
Okay.
So which meant कि तकरीबन 2.5-3 million people with disabilities living in Pakistan at that point in time.
ठीक है. और सेंसस ऐसे होता है कि लोग बताते हैं, तो most people weren't even talking about.
बिल्कुल. 98 का सेंसस की बात है, ठीक है. अब obviously you know that दुनिया भर की population में अगर 15%, 1 in 7 individuals will be born with a disability in the world. ये world के stats हैं, और develop like जो global south है, हमारी वाली दुनिया, उसमें एक और स्टेटिस्टिक है यूएन का that says 80% of individuals with disabilities live in the global south.
There you go.
And उसकी परसेंटेज को पता नहीं कितने मिलियन होंगे ना, राइट? आ नहीं रहे कैलकुलेशन के अंदर. अच्छा, अब हुआ नेक्स्ट सेंसस, हम बड़ी मूवमेंट्स हो रही हैं, हम लोग की ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं, मल्टीपल एडवोकेसी चल रही है, लॉबिंग हो रही है, गवर्नमेंट से बातचीत चल रही है, और 2017 में सेंसस हुआ.
Okay, wonderful.
2017 में जब सेंसस हुआ, can you imagine what the percentage came out to be?
No.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Less than 1%. So 0.47%, which means less than 1 million people with disabilities now in the country. So all of a sudden from 98 to 2017, the statistic reduced.
इतना regression हो गया.
और मतलब गायब हो गए. जो थे भी, जो भी गिनती में आए थे, वो भी गायब हो गए. What is going on? It was just like ridiculous. फिर जो movements हुई, और हुआ इस वाले सेंसस में थोड़ी सी ये मसला था कि जो डिसेबिलिटी का चेक बॉक्स था ना, वो बाद में ऐड हुआ.
Okay.
और जब पूछने के लिए जो मेथडोलॉजी थी, जब बाद में ऐड हुआ, आधा सेंसस हो चुका था, जब ऐड करने के बाद वो भी काफ़ी मूवमेंट हुई, बिकॉज हमारे पास रोल मॉडल्स इतने सारे अच्छे, लाइक अच्छे, आई मीन आई एम जस्ट लाइक सेइंग मेन स्ट्रीम के अंदर डिसेबिलिटीज आनी प्रेजेंट हो गई है ना, लाइक समबडी लाइक मुनीबा मज़ारी, आई एम नॉट श्योर इफ यू नो अबाउट हर.
I know about Muniba.
Oh my God, she's lovely.
Brilliant, mashallah.
She is, she's so kind to, like, you meet her and you just want to, like, mashallah, she's
so powerful.
Incredible. And also all of a sudden how people view disability versus like when they see Muniba Mazari, it's like थोड़ा सा perceptions हिलते हैं ना लोगों के. Anyway, so वो जब movements हुई तो check box add हुआ था, तो methodology of actually asking those questions was around आपके घर में कोई माजूर है, तो अगर सवाल भी ऐसे पूछे जाएंगे तो पीपल और ज़्यादा थोड़ा डिफेंसिव पे हो जाते हैं, बताना भी नहीं चाहेंगे, like why would somebody. So it's just it was just very unfortunate that happened, because based off of that is all the provisions that are allocated, and based off of that
Funds
is all the
and all those
movement.
things, yeah.
लेकिन उसके बाद से ना तो ऐसी जो disability related organizations है ना, who work on inclusion, who work on diversity, they've like stepped up.
They must have been irate.
They've created a lot of pressure, and state is now involved, like I mean, to their credit, the federal government and the Sindh government now has a department for the empowerment of persons with disabilities.
Wow, mashallah.
First, पहले हो रहा था special education और social welfare के अंदर. Social welfare के अंदर disability की help होती थी. Just by connotation is like charity.
Sure.
Pity. But now there is the Department for the Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. It's a feel, right?
It's much better.
Things are changing.
And that's everything, If you just change that paradigm, that's everything, It's the same thing with discourse around other movements, like even women empowerment or any of those. Mera Jasam, Meri Marzi, any of those things. The conversations around rape. Any of those things, the language is super important.
Of
right?
course.
And also, imagine again going to parents and then asking them, "Ki aapka bacha mazur hai?" Come on, it's not the same thing, man. Disability is also a sterile word compared to mazuri. Mazuri has. It's never not going to have. It's that language, no? It's a much more powerful language. Urdu is than English. English is a little more neutral.
सही बात है.
Right?
बिल्कुल.
So disability is very like disability hai. Disability also then implies something that you can work with. This is a disability. I also have dyslexia. Right? Also disability.
Sure.
But no one. It's fine. Whatever. Right? Allah ka karam hai. My younger siblings have had a more difficult go of it, so they got speech therapy, and they worked around it. Speech therapy, they had some kind of therapy for it, and then that's it, right? That's what happens. Isi tarike se, that's a disability. This is a more difficult disability. No one's saying it's not, right? Still a disability though, no? Not mazuri. Mazuri also implies a finality to it, I think.
Yeah.
ये माजूर है मतलब ये कभी ठीक ही नहीं होगा, bro. उसको ठीक होना ही नहीं है. It's just a different kind of thing. It's just a different kind of person.
हाँ, और ये भी बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है, अंग्रेजी और उर्दू का डिफरेंस.
Yeah.
It is just हम लोग, because I previously worked prior to this. I was working for this other organization that works with people with disabilities. I worked there 5 years.
Wow. Are you comfortable naming them?
Yeah, of course. Now PDP. I love the organization.
Okay, of course.
Still do. I don't know why I didn't mention the name. I always talk about it.
Organization hai.
So my husband actually is the executive director at Now PDP.
Oh wow, mashallah.
Yeah.
Now PDP.
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
It's the network of organizations working with people with disabilities in Pakistan.
Wow.
Quite a mouthful.
It's a little bit.
My father, like, funny story. That's why I'm mentioning it. My father is like, मैंने 5 साल उधर काम किया, and he like learnt the name Now PDP. Eventually, he's like, अच्छा मैं लोगों को बता सकता हूँ, network of organizations working with people. And then I switched. I went to KDSP, and he's like, oh my goodness, do not give me another acronym.
He's just like KDSP. That's wonderful. How was your experience working there?
There was multiple interactions with multiple types of disabilities, and you kind of become friends as well. For the first time, you have friends with disabilities, and you don't really see it that way, but you learn a lot.
Sure, of course.
So one of our colleagues said this. He's visually impaired, so he's blind, and he was on a bus ride somewhere, and somebody said something to him, like something. कि ये अंधे हैं ना, तो इनको स्पेस दे दो, या इनको ये बिठा दे, बैठने के लिए जगह दे दी. And he got really upset. And somebody asked him कि why are you upset? Like उसने मुझे अंधा बोला. And like क्या बोलते हैं instead? वो कहते blind. So it was like andha is like translated into blind.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, but the connotation around andha is like, it's so bad. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So it's used as slur. Like, it's like in language, generally people use it as a taunt.
Taunt
casually.
Absolutely do. And taunt also, I don't, again, is it because the implication is, or built into the word andha is some kind of fault on the person's part versus blind is just a steady state. I wonder about these things sometimes. But
yeah, interesting.
All of that has nothing to do with the person. Na insaan ko to takleef ho rahi ho, insaan ko takleef ho, you stop that, then we think about it. Then we'll do that later. We'll think about it कि भाई क्यों है, क्यों नहीं है, and all those things.
और पूछ लो कि क्या लगा. I mean, क्योंकि अक्सर ये होता है ना, हम बात करते हैं and we don't name them. We go like, this is a person with this. Like prior to that, उनका नाम है, like call them by their name. Like abhi when I was introducing Alea, I'm like, Alea is their daughter, and she has Down syndrome, but you don't have to lead with that.
No.
They're humans. They have a name.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and you see it, you start seeing it that way eventually. And if you don't just like, I think it's a big barrier because we haven't interacted that much. I think it is, we put up these walls and we're like, kind of like on the fence and trying to sugarcoat things. These terms that are coming up, differently abled. And like there's also one, people of determination, and there's a term, these are people of determination. Why do you call them people with disabilities? These are people of determination. And like my standpoint is like and I guess I borrow it from the UN standpoint. It's not my standpoint. I
came up with it myself.
मेरा credit कहीं और दे देते हैं, खुद नहीं ले रहे इसके ऊपर. But see, there's no denying the fact that there is a organ or bodily sensory limitation.
Sure.
Because there is one.
Of course.
So recognizing that and identifying that is important, and it might be difficult for the parents. It might be very difficult for the caregivers because they don't want that. They don't want to accept the limitation in their children.
Of course.
So that's often the difficult time when, and we feel good about ourselves somehow by neutralizing the term or by sort of normalizing disability. So when we say differently abled, or people with special needs, or that they're extra special, things like that. It's just us feeling good about ourselves and trying not to hurt somebody's sentiment.
It has nothing to do with the child or the person with the thing. It has everything to do with us and our sentiments and all. I could not agree more.
And having said that, people prefer different things. So even individuals with disabilities, they prefer different things. They say, call me differently able, or call me a person with a disability, or call me blind, or call me deaf.
Yeah.
So they have their own sort of philosophy and terms, and they differentiate because they're humans too. They have a range to it. ये थोड़ी हो सकता है कि वो एक ही मार्क हम सबको दे दें. अब कोई hearing disability कहलाना चाह रहा है, कोई deaf कहना चाह रहा है. हमें like we use these UN based terms and then we get some not flack from the community, but we get like certain arguments from the deaf community, and they go like, why are you calling us persons with hearing and speech disabilities?
Just call deaf.
इतना mouthful क्यों कर रहे हो? क्या मसला है? Call us deaf. We're perfectly okay with it. We're perfectly comfortable. अब we भी ये कुछ lot है, अब वो कुछ और lot, शायद कुछ और चाहे.
But I think the preoccupation with naming things, with categorizing things, is something that it doesn't, as long as you know what it is, right?
Yeah.
And we do, to be fair, know what it is. Like Down syndrome is a disability. Usko ab differently abled bol do, sab kuch bol do, but in that debate, in that linguistic struggle, don't forget what's actually important.
Right.
And what's actually important, like you've said, is that the first 1,000 days, so the first 3 years, are paramount. अगर वो वालदैन जो है इसी चीज़ में फंसे रहेंगे कि यार ये खुदा का कहर है, ये माजूर है, all those things, we're wasting time. We don't have a day to waste. It's just not, we don't have that time.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, and अक्सर it's like, ये ठीक कब होगा? या ये ठीक हो जाए. हम कहते हैं ठीक, बिल्कुल ठीक है. So when a family comes to KDSP, it's a different experience. People often talk to me about because I've been working in the social development sector for 10 years now.
Oh, mashallah.
Right? And
10 years in Pakistan?
In Pakistan.
Okay. Tell me about this experience, then we must get into your education also. Because you've आपने पढ़ाई बाहर की है.
I can speak about KDSP. And
I know. Okay, so
for an hour.
I did challenge you. This is my fault.
So, what was I saying?
You were saying that when families first come into KDSP, it's a proper experience. What's the experience?
हाँ, सो मुझसे लोग बोलते हैं ना कि कितना फलाई काम कर रहे हो, कितना अच्छा काम कर रहे हो, लाइक सच गुड वर्क, कितना मुश्किल होता होगा, कितना सैड है, कितना सैड होता है, तुम कैसे इमोशन से डील करती हो ना. मुझे कभी कभी अजीब सी लगती है बात, बिकॉज कोई आ जाए ना KDSP, कोई देख ले आके क्या है.
It's just a party.
It is such a happy place. Oh my goodness. You're going to be sitting in a meeting and there's going to be a child with Down syndrome who's going to walk into the room. You're going to be like, notes leke aayo, baith jao. Like if you're in a meeting, you have to take notes, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to come in, nahi main yahi baithung, ya yahi main baithunga, aa jaye, join in. So we're having like a work meeting and a child who's studying in a class. And sometimes like it's a preschool, so it's like the little tiny kids, babies. Oh my goodness. It is the most beautiful thing. And the one thing about children with Down syndrome is, like I said, like, you know, they're expressive in different ways. So they demonstrate a lot of love and affection in their gestures.
No.
So it's very often that you're going to be getting smiles and hugs and whatnot. And then they get attached. So it is just, and the families. Oh my God, जब COVID था ना, they would be like, please खोल दे, हम कहाँ जाए? Like, you know, हमारा घर है ये दूसरा. Because the mothers get together and they have like their own groups.
Of course.
They do like coffee dates
They
and
must.
whatnot. They hang out all the time. They have groups going. They help each other out. And then they sit at KDSP while their children are studying or in therapy and all, and they chat.
They have a ball.
They have such a good time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This is beautiful. But let us now at least formalize the whole thing. So, क्योंकि ये हमने नहीं किया ना, we talk all over the place, right? And which is, I love that. I absolutely have a ball, but parents have just been told by the doctor, क्योंकि डॉक्टर को पता पड़ जाता है उसी वक्त, at birth he has Down syndrome. What happens? They get in touch with you.
Yes. So Down syndrome actually diagnosed हो सकता है during pregnancy.
Okay, wow.
Within 10 weeks of pregnancy, like when you're expecting, you can get a test in and know whether the child will be born with Down syndrome. Post birth, there are very identifiable features as well, like a single crease होती है अक्सर palm के अंदर, and facial features बड़े evident होते हैं, flat nasal bridge, slant of the eyes. वो तो होता ही है, बट उससे फिर उसके बाद एक टेस्ट कहलाता है कैरियोटाइप टेस्ट, वो कर सकते हैं ताकि कंफर्म भी हो जाए डायग्नोसिस. सो हॉस्पिटल्स के साथ हमारी कोलैबोरेशंस भी हैं, हमने मेडिकल प्रोफेशनल्स को जितनी अवेयरनेस दे सकते हैं दें. तो व्हाट दे डू इज रेफर टू KDSP.
Okay, wonderful.
Or the first thing you do, like if you search on Google, you write Down syndrome, if you're sitting anywhere in Karachi or Pakistan even, this is going to be like the first thing that's going to pop up.
Okay.
And people know about KDSP now. Everybody and anybody who belongs to the world of Down syndrome, it's specifically in cities where there is some form of an understanding, specifically in those. People know about KDSP because people talk about like Islamabad aa jaye, Peshawar aa jaye, Quetta aa jaye, Lahore aa jaye, Hyderabad aa jaye, everywhere we get these.
Of course.
And I think, yes, let me get into what KDSP does before I get into what all is there आगे.
So let me
clarify करती हूँ.
Absolutely. Let me exactly. I mean, so they get in touch with you. Doctors को भी पता है कि doctors will give them that option कि देखो मसला नहीं है. Alhamdulillah, we have KDSP and we'll get in touch with them.
Perfect.
They call you.
यहाँ से मैं करते हैं.
They call you. फिर?
So अब कराची डाउन सिंड्रोम प्रोग्राम है क्या? कुछ लोग कहते हैं वो थेरेपी का इदारा है, कुछ लोग कहते हैं एजुकेशन देता है, कुछ लोग कहते हैं आपकी मदद कर देंगे, फैमिली को सपोर्ट मिल जाएगी. वी से वी आर अ कश्ती.
A ship. A boat. Yes.
And the moment a family first time comes into KDSP, we sit them down, we talk to them for a few hours, and we call each one of them. So we speak to each one of them, each one of the 1,400 that are registered with us. We have spoken to them in depth.
Okay.
So the first meetings are all about like emotions and venting and like information. अब से क्या करना है? So कश्ती के आप आ गए हैं हमारी कश्ती के अंदर, which means that we've got you covered in all ways. So KDSP is a one-stop holistic service provider for all individuals with Down syndrome and their families. And in this kashti, we say that there is a journey that we're now headed into. We've embarked a journey in this kashti together. We're there with you every step of the way. And inshallah, your child's also going to have a beautiful life, which is going to be independent, and they're going to be a contributing part of an inclusive society. It's just about holding tight and being their biggest advocate. And sometimes, the waters might be choppy.
Sure,
and
of course.
Other times there'll be calm seas. But again, we're there with you every step of the way. And interestingly, Kashti ka jo ek alphabet hai na, that stands for each of our areas of service. So Kashti ka K is for Khandani Sahara, which is all our family support programs.
Yes.
So family support ke andar emotional, informational, financial support for all families who are associated with us.
So KDSP also then provides support for the parents.
For the parents as well.
Okay.
Kashti. So families are very important to us now because it's pura ecosystem hai. It's not like anything alag se bacche ke liye khali. Kashti ka A is for Agahi, which is all our awareness-based initiatives. The carnival's on the 20th of March, which is one of the ways we create awareness. It's like an inclusive platform. Everybody comes in, sees that there are more similarities than differences when you actually speak at a human level.
Sure.
We do multiple campaigns throughout the year. There's a number of very fantastic artists who are involved with us too. They help us out in spreading more and more awareness. And then Kashti ka S is for Sehat, which is healthcare. So healthcare ke andar we collaborate with the Khan University Hospital and Indus. And AKU ke andar pehla Down Syndrome clinic of Pakistan has been created, which means that there is a team of specialized doctors specifically trained in managing all conditions related to health concerns of children with Down syndrome.
When was this established?
2017.
Oh my God.
It is led by Dr. Salman Kirmani, who is perhaps, we all adore him. We're so fond of him. He's worked at the Mayo Clinic in Boston, and then when he came back, and he's now the chair of child and maternal health at AKU, and he also is the lead for the Down syndrome clinic and the reason why it was also established. So एक पूरी full-fledged team जिसके अंदर then we get those procedures into. You remember how we were speaking about 1 in every 2 children will have a congenital heart? वो understand करते हैं. जो हमारे pediatric cardiologist हैं उनके पास जाके identify होती है, and then we make sure that the surgery and the procedure happens timely.
Okay.
अब हो गया S तक हो गया. अब आ जाएं H पे. H is for हुनर. All our skills building programs. So this is for the young adults with Down syndrome. तो जब हम लोगों ने start किया था तो हम लोग बच्चों के लिए सर्विस अर्ली इंटरवेंशन पे फोकस कर रहे थे. तो जो बड़े बच्चे थे 16-17 साल के, वो most of them were non-verbal and they didn't have those skills because they never got the early intervention because KDSP didn't exist prior to that. So the parents came and said हमारे बच्चों के लिए क्या? तो हमने स्किल्स बिल्डिंग की क्लासेस शुरू की. उसके अंदर दे मेक डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स एंड प्रोडक्ट्स. वी सेल देम ऑन देयर बिहाफ. दे गेट अ स्टाइपेंड. 100% of the proceeds go back to them, and they bring in a stipend. So previously conceived as a burden to the family or liability is now bringing in money. So it is just again like a beautiful system. And then we have T is for Talim. तालीम के अंदर it is all our educational based initiatives. Education के अंदर हम कई सारी चीज़ें करते हैं. We have a preschool. Children between the ages of 1.5 to 3-year-olds, we prepare them to become school ready. And when we say school ready, we're giving them all sorts of interventions that will, allow them having sitting tolerance, learning with other children as well. And we do so because at 3 or 4, when they qualify from the preschool, they go to mainstream schools. Mainstream schools. We have about 15 partner schools that are working towards inclusion within Karachi. Yes.
Name some of the.
कुछ के नाम लेते हैं. हम लोग बिल्कुल लेते हैं. Veritas Learning Circle, VLC. There's AMI.
Okay.
There is Cornerstones. There is the Learning Tree.
CS भी होते हैं.
CAS में भी होते हैं, but CAS के साथ अभी हम लोग currently नहीं collaborate कर रहे.
Okay.
होता ये है कि they do seats. So every year they go like, okay, we have space for one child with Down syndrome in this classroom. So when they open up seats is when we sort of partner with them and then have children from the preschool be placed in those schools, and now they're studying in those schools, have friends who are typically developing, learning alongside. I mean, of course, inclusive education is a huge challenge, in this context. I mean, I could give you an analogy. We'll talk about that later. Yes. But we basically, the preschool is there so that we can mainstream children with Down syndrome, make them a part of inclusive society, and they learn, because studies also show that typically developing individuals, children, learn better when they have children with Down syndrome alongside, or children with disabilities alongside, because they learn certain traits that don't exist earlier. So traits like responsibility, compassion, empathy, naturally.
Difference, difference is a big one also. It's all right.
Tolerance, diversity, acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. Keeping on track. I.
टी खत्म हो गया. होम स्कूलिंग है, आफ्टर स्कूल है, बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम्स हैं. और फिर आई कश्ती का इज़ फॉर इब्तदाई बुनियाद, विच इज़ योर अर्ली चाइल्डहुड इंटरवेंशन. दी first 3 years, the first 1,000 days that we're talking about, we extend this to 7 years. So we do 0 to 7, जिसमें speech, occupational, physical therapy होती है. So close to 450 clinics every week happen at KDSP.
Every week. So week over week बच्चों की therapy होती है. And a team of like 25 now growing therapists, occupational, speech and physical, and they provide early intervention to the children. So it kind of becomes like an entire ecosystem. They come in, they get therapy, they get the preschool, then they get into mainstream schools, they get after school services, they get all their healthcare needs addressed. When they grow up, they get like skills development classes as well. And while we're creating all sorts of awareness in society, while having the families and the caregivers be their biggest advocates and then fighting their case. Okay. So then the goal would, so that is very apt. Yes. I think we can make that a short clip. And then, because the thing is, it's just, like I said, it's so much.
Yeah.
It's huge, So that's brilliant. आपने अभी बोला मुझे कि you will also give me an analogy about inclusive education. Is the goal basically for mainstream schools to just have room is not a good word. They have the resources that are required. Yes. Like that's the main goal?
Yes. So lots of times we hear parents say आप लोग अपना स्कूल खोल लें, because they love KDSP, like because उनको कभी बाहर दुनिया में वो understanding, empathy, compassion नहीं मिला जो उनको यहाँ मिलता है. Because उनके लिए like this is, parents say something like, एक parent ने बोला था, मेरे दिल पे लगी थी बात, कि उन्होंने बोला कि जो मेरा बेटा बाहर जब होता था उसको कैसे दुनिया ने ट्रीट किया, और जब मैं यहाँ पे आया तो मुझे ना जिस तरह शहजादे का अब्बा नहीं होता, उससे भी ऊपर ले जाए, उस तरह मुझे ट्रीट किया गया. Because it's just like, it really is their place.
Yeah.
And now slowly we're realizing that we're just a small organization. We're 75 employees.
Yeah.
The actual people who are going to take this mandate forward are the parents, these 1,400 families.
Yeah.
The parents who are going to be the support for each other. हम लोग वो support वो नहीं provide कर पाएंगे जो वो एक दूसरे को देते हैं.
Right, of course.
They get it. They're on the same journey.
Yeah.
So it's just, it is very beautiful.
What the fuck, dude? एक minute. I'm fine. So what do we do? It's really powerful. No? It's just so much, because I sincerely believe this. Without fail, kids are the reason why we're still here.
Yeah.
Because we're so fucked. We've ruined everything. Especially हमारे मुआशरे में, but even globally, we don't know what's going on. We don't know which way is up. But a child is pure, and a child has love, and unconditional love at that. So if we can't take care of them, तो फिर क्या scene है? कोई scene ही नहीं है ना हमारा. Okay. But inclusive education, again, you said you had an analogy, and you said that there have been. I cannot even like. आपके बोलने से पहले मैं यकीन था कि challenges तो होंगे. Because again, I will say this, most education institutes are run as profit maximization concerns. From what you're highlighting, KDSP does not sound like a profit maximization concern.
Yeah, we're non-profit. Yeah.
Non-profit, right? And even if you were for profit, I think you need to understand this. The goal of an organization cannot be making money first, right? Even a newspaper, you can't ever say stuff like, this is a money-making concern.
Sure.
No, it's a news reporting concern.
Sure.
Money is a consequence. Right? तो आप लोगों का तो है ही नहीं, non-profit है. लेकिन even अगर होता, even if for instance you run a school, you can't run a school like that because it's just too difficult, right? You need to understand being the kashti is the primary goal. Money is a consequence. Money will come, right? But if you start chasing money, you lose the humanity of it all. And to that end, that is a long-winded way of saying कि some of the teachers in these institutions, उनके अपने their own apparatus is not developed enough कि वो that they'd be able to work with KDSP. With all due respect to all teachers, I'm not like when मैं आपको सिर्फ ये बता रहा हूँ, my experiences are nothing compared to this, right? But when I was young and I couldn't read, I'd get beaten up for it.
Oh God.
You know, and it's cool. Like, I'm tough, man. Whatever, you know. It's fine. Alhamdulillah. लेकिन it's not. एक तरीके से it's not even their fault because ये मतलब 20,000 30,000 की salary पे what are you expecting, you know? No one's gonna get qualified to be able to deal with this stuff and then come and work for that much. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Even on a financial level, right?
No, of course
so a lot of these schools, I think the biggest challenge, I don't know, obviously you would know, but I would feel that the biggest challenge is कि these जो caregivers हैं या जो teachers हैं, they're not built for this.
Of course.
You know, they're not educated for this.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the target. I mean, absolutely. Resource constraints, intense. And we feel that even more so when you're working with children with disabilities or children with Down syndrome. Because children with Down syndrome develop and learn differently as well, right? So, स्कूल्स की कैपेसिटी बढ़ाने के ऊपर हम बहुत सारा काम करते हैं. ज़रूरी भी है बिकॉज बच्चे विद डाउन सिंड्रोम you can't have multiple children with Down syndrome in a class of typically developing individuals as well, because each child with Down syndrome will have an individualized educational plan. It's called an IEP.
Okay.
Which means that उनकी जो outcomes हैं वो थोड़ी सी tweaked होती हैं, customized होती हैं as per their capability, capacity.
That makes sense, obviously. Yeah. But are they also allocated a resource?
They're also allocated a resource, oftentimes. So these schools that we work with, they generally have a resource teacher, a department, different names for it too, remedial teacher, resource teacher, facilitators who are under the SENCO कहलाता है, एक special education needs का coordinator. So multiple terms floating around, different schools practice different types of things. अभी हमने जो recently शुरू किया है वो ये है कि अगर स्कूल तैयार है, स्कूल की conviction है, willingness है, want to do inclusion, want to work on inclusion, you don't have to bear the financial burden. Wow. We will provide you a trained inclusion facilitator who's going to be with the children, who's going to try to create that culture of inclusion, and is also going to practice, like work with the child to ensure that unki outcomes. We sort of like testing this model out too, struggling with it too, because while you say okay, money is a consequence and financials are not something we focus on at all, we want to do right by the children. So everything that we do is 100% quality. We don't do anything unless we do it absolutely right. The two commitments that the co-founders made when they started KDSP was one of them was कि जो भी काम करेंगे नॉन प्रॉफिट होने के नाम पे कभी भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ नहीं करेंगे क्वालिटी पे. सही. Quality का काम होगा. When you come to KDSP, you'll also see it, because the way it's kind of built out, it's all heart, and you see the aesthetics that way too. तो हम लोग कोई चीज़ रुक जाएंगे करने से, लेकिन हम करेंगे तब जब हमें पता है कि अच्छा करेंगे. इंशाल्लाह. The other thing, that other commitment was कि कोई भी family जिसके बच्चे को Down syndrome होगा will never be sent back from KDSP just because they couldn't afford a service. We will cover their transport. we will cover that allowance as well, but just make sure that you bring your child to essential services.
Yeah.
And we'll cover the cost for it too. And these two commitments are very heavy in terms of financials.
Of course.
So as we grow, the need for more and more support and contribution increases, because we've grown from 7 families to 1,400 families, and around 50% of the families that take services from us can't afford services. So whether they're on zakat or whether they're on financial aid, we have a Sharia compliant system through which we also take zakat and like sort of work with the families, provide for them when they can't. But having said that, again, the service providers are unaware of whether a family is on zakat or financial aid.
Yeah, they don't need to know.
They do not know.
They
So
don't need
that
to know.
everybody is treated the same way.
Absolutely.
There's no difference in any which way.
हमारे माशरे में ये भी बड़ा मसला है ना.
ये भी मसला है.
Class systems भी तो होते हैं ना. Class systems and all that nonsense. अल्लाह रहम करेगा इंशाल्लाह उस front पे भी, हर front पे.
तो हम बस schools के साथ कर रहे हैं ये वाला काम. अभी ongoing struggle है थोड़ी सी. Because अब हमें ये भी पता है कि कितना मुश्किल काम होगा अगर मल्टीपल चिल्ड्रन विद डाउन सिंड्रोम, हम कहते हैं तो एडवोकेट तो करते हैं बिल्कुल, बट जो सीट्स एलोकेट भी करते हैं ना वो प्रोपोर्शन के हिसाब से करते हैं क्लास के अंदर. सो प्रोपोर्शन जो है वो फिर भी जो दुनिया का प्रोपोर्शन है वही रहना चाहिए ना. 1 in 7 अगर दुनिया में डिसेबिलिटीज़ हैं, अब डिसेबिलिटीज़ भी मुख्तलिफ किस्म की होती हैं, 1 in 700 इंडिविजुअल्स विद डाउन सिंड्रोम है, तो उसके हिसाब से प्रोपोर्शन भी रहता है. तो क्लास में 1 या 2 क्लासेस में 1 इज परफेक्टली ओके एज वेल, राइट. एंड द पॉपुलेशन इज सच, इट्स जस्ट कैपेसिटी बढ़ाओ अगर स्कूल्स की टीचर्स के साथ काम करें, हम लोग फाइनेंशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट्स भी कर दें. येट देयर आर 3 फंडामेंटल कंसर्न्स अगर मैं बॉयल डाउन करूँ इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन के अंदर क्या है, जो हमारे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में है, जो बाहर की दुनिया के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कम है. बिकॉज पाकिस्तान के अंदर और ग्लोबल साउथ भी जनरली. तो एक तो है हमारा लीगल फ्रेमवर्क. पॉलिसी भले है कि एवरी चाइल्ड हैज़ द राइट टू एजुकेशन, ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ एजुकेशन, इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन. Enforcement, implementation, hardly. There is no pressure on schools. There is no system through which it is verified whether a child with a disability is studying at a school or not, or whether they were refused admission.
Are they doing you favors? Like, what is this? Okay.
So yes, so it's kind of like a big thing. You have to tread carefully when you're working with schools as well, because we want our kids to study in the mainstream.
Of course.
And we can't create one school for that because people live in different parts of the city and they need a school close to their house.
Yes.
And we want to create a society that encourages that, right? So कुछ schools हैं जो ज़बरदस्त तरीके से करने की कोशिश करें, दिल, heart, everything. And I think एक तो legal framework की बात करूँगी मैं, क्योंकि enforcement कम है और कोई pressure किसी किस्म का नहीं है, और जैसी state का pressure आता है किसी भी चीज़ के अंदर, things start happening naturally. हमारे पास नहीं है वो वाला.
Okay.
The other bit is, I think, the conviction, awareness and understanding of inclusive education and what it means to have diversity in a school, as opposed to narrow focus and just making like profits and a model of some sort जो बन रहा होता है. So वो conviction, while inclusion is a buzzword these days, it's still not translating in multiple schools, and and I think जो चाहते हैं ना उनके लिए capacity constraints आ जाती हैं. So the biggest reason also is resources, and when I say resources I mean all sorts of financial हो या human हो, because आप अगर teachers की बात की, lowly paid profession, thankless role, multiple things dumped on you.
Yes.
Everybody is a teacher, because कोई license proper तो कोई है नहीं किसी किस्म का.
There's no governing body.
There is nothing. So it is just such an open, strange market as well, where sometimes there are great, fantastic, very heart-wali teachers as well. They join in. फिर पाकिस्तान का कॉन्टेक्स्ट ले आएँ दुनिया के अंदर, अगर हम लोग हमारी दुनिया के अंदर ले आएँ तो लड़कियाँ होती हैं यूजली टीचर्स. दे ड्रॉप आउट वेरी अर्ली, शादी हो गई, बच्चे हो गए, फैमिली ने पुल कर लिया, or they don't want to anymore, priorities change, which is fair too. I'm not
That's fine.
judging that, but I'm just saying that this leaves us in a very, very awkward, strange space, because who do you get for teaching children with Down syndrome who have those specific needs. And while we create resource teachers, we do multiple trainings. We have a remedial teacher training program, and we try to compensate them fine too. It is just it is an ongoing struggle, ongoing battle everywhere. So we're kind of warped in this too. We're trying to take it by the day, and जो analogy भी है ना वो बड़ी interesting है. Personal front पे हम आ जाएंगे, घुस जाएंगे, but maybe relatable for people. But I feel like inclusive education is like a marriage.
Sure.
Where you have to work on it every single day.
Yes.
There is no solution.
There isn't. There really isn't.
It is just an ongoing struggle.
Absolutely. Yes.
And there will be joys.
Yes.
But there will also be pain. There will be frustration.
So joys necessitate pain, na? You can't have one without the other. क्या party चल रही है? Heaven में हो? क्या कर रहे हो? You know what I mean? So, yeah. Absolutely.
कोई end नहीं है, ऐसा कोई end नहीं है कि और ऊपर से बच्चे इन्वॉल्व हो जाते हैं, तो बच्चे इन्वॉल्व हो जाएंगे तो कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता वैसे ही. It's going to go on and on. You have to go on and on.
Yeah.
So it's just I mean, like, it's just a way to look at it. It's not like हम लोग सोचते हैं ना कि कोई global best practice उठा के लगा दें, copy paste कर दें.
Yes.
हो नहीं सकता.
No, impossible.
हर चीज़ की context, हर चीज़, क्योंकि humans different है ना, हर कोई की अलग अलग nuances, लोगों की अपनी quirks, अपनी different way, kind of things that through which they learn. So it's just yeah.
I think generally, we have this proclivity to search for certainty, where like मुझे guarantee दे दो.
हाँ.
तो किसी चीज़ की गारंटी तो होती नहीं है ना.
नहीं होती.
So yeah, I think very aptly put. Yeah, it's a marriage and you have to work at it every day, and there will be some painful days, and you have to be willing to go through it. And the thing is, it is worth it. But you have to understand that it's worth it, and ये भी आपको कोई और नहीं convince करेगा. Okay, you will have to convince yourself. This too, you have to become self-sufficient in that way. And therapy में ये बहुत किया जाता है कि you have to fix your own वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको, locus of evaluation. You have to fix your own. You have to figure that stuff out yourself.
Yeah.
There's just no other way. So we had to take a break. I'm sorry.
This is fine.
This is good. Yeah. Just now it's not good. Yeah. Just take it with you wherever you go. So we did have to get into, the carnival is what you're doing right now, and it's to raise funds. Is it generally difficult to raise funds for this cause?
So not for the first few years, because the budgets were very limited. The scale of operation was also limited. So since the board and the family that was involved, they could almost self-fund.
All right. Mashallah.
Through their family, through their contacts, through their connections. But it's different when you're working with 7 to 100 families, and then different when you're working for 1,400 families. 1,400 families just in Karachi and in Pakistan generally. But then there are also some families that get involved from outside of Pakistan. So there's some families in Saudi Arabia, some in UK who also take virtual services from us.
Oh, so you offer that as well, mashallah.
Yes.
Okay. So would you know how much one family costs?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Because we break it down in terms of programs, because every program kind of differs so much from each one.
Makes
so for
sense.
example, I'll give you an example
Okay.
एक therapy session, एक speech therapy का session, एक occupational therapy का session, एक physical therapy का session, घंटे का हमारे therapist के साथ, based on all the costs that we incur, is 2,000 rupees per session. हम families को charge करते हैं 500. Severely subsidized, सब families को, generally एक overall discount. और उसमें से भी अगर families नहीं pay कर पाती तो उनको range मिल जाती है 0%, 25%, 75%, 50%, 100%. And they also get a transport allowance. So while we incur a cost of 2,000 every session, 1,500 तो हम वैसे ही खुद ही buffer कर रहे हैं. And that adds up when you do 400 sessions every week for however many, 52 weeks that are there in a year, right?
That does add up.
It does add up. So हमारी उस तरीके से per child, per session therapy clinics के अंदर cost निकल आती है, उसी तरीके से हमारे education programs की cost होती है. So it costs us about 35 to 40,000 to educate a child in the preschool every month.
Every month.
We charge 10,000 का tuition. उसमें से भी again the subsidies are in place and then उसके the financial aids the caste systems kick in. So होता ये है कि हम हमेशा deficit में रहते हैं. There is no way an organization like ours can have inflows from the families the same amount as our outflows. So हमारा जो balance होता है ना वो fill करती है हमारी resource mobilization fundraising की team.
Fundraising की team.
और fundraising की team work करती है directly with the board. Board of directors, heavily vested, heavily involved, young, mobilized again, but this year only, हमारा budget last year fiscal year का हमारा budget था total 75 million का.
Okay.
This year we have a 180 million का budget. Wow. 180 million because we are now limited in our space. So हमारे पास 2 floors हैं in one of the buildings. It's called लाल कोठी जेसन ट्रेड सेंटर शारे फैसल पे होता है, उधर है हमारा ऑफिस. सो 2 फ्लोर्स हैं, लेकिन बच्चों के लिए बाहर प्ले एरिया नहीं है. एजुकेशन के लिए काफ़ी लिमिटेशन आ जाती हैं. घुस घुस के सब चीज़ें कर रहे हैं. टीम एक्सपैंड कर रही है, फैमिलीज एक्सपैंड कर गई हैं, वेट लिस्ट एक्सपैंड कर गई हैं. सो अब वाइल वी हैव 400 odd sessions going on every week, we just don't have the space to have more children receive therapy. तो कैपेसिटी हमारी स्पेस कंस्ट्रेंट्स हो गई थी. तो this year we decided on expanding.
Wow.
In terms of physical space.
More than doubling, huh? From 75 to 180, that's more than doubling. That's
almost.
Allah kamyab karega inshallah. But and
so
okay.
Which means the requirements increase substantially.
Yeah.
And which means we're doing a lot of like fundraising exercises. We do a couple of fundraisers. We have an annual donation drive. So for 3 months, we run a donate-a-thon. We call it a donate-a-thon.
Okay.
And
Nice.
people kind of contribute. They enter then a lucky draw. They get free gifts. So you contribute to a good cause, plus you get an entry in the lucky draw and get to win prizes. So बल्कि donate-a-thon की end होती है कार्निवल के दिन. तो हमारा सारा कल्मिनेशन जो है ना वो एंड में आ रहा है वर्ल्ड डाउन सिंड्रोम डे के करीब. सो राइट नाउ इज लाइक इंटेंस टाइम फॉर अस टू. रमजान कैंपेन शुरू होती है.
Keeping it together? You're good?
Sort of.
Yeah.
On the outside, at the very least, kind of have to maintain a certain type calm.
Right, inside your little... Allah raham kare.
That's right.
Sahi hai. But that's wonderful. Okay. How difficult is it to convince people though that you are, because the thing is you're doing wonderful work, right?
Yeah.
I don't and Karachi is supposed to be the philanthropic capital of the world, right? And there's all these organizations and it's beautiful, everything's good, right? But how difficult is it to convince people that you will use their funds for what you're claiming to use their funds for? Because यहाँ पे वो वाले सारे मसले भी तो बहुत है ना. There's not a lot of trust. There's a deficit of trust in this.
So एक चीज़ जो है ना स्टैंडर्ड है, KDSP की credibility is very high. Very high.
Of course. Yeah.
And there's a reason for it too. There's 3 ways in which a non-profit can be established. Right. So one is under the Societies Act 81, and then one is under a trust. As a trust, as a Societies Act, and then there's a Companies Act.
Okay.
So the most transparent, authentic way of like registering is under the SECP, which is the Security Exchange Commission Pakistan. उसके अंदर अगर आप register करते हो as a non-profit, that's the most transparent way of operating, which means intense regulatory concerns and intense regulatory requirements.
Absolute oversight, all those things, yeah.
So we're a Section 42 company.
Okay.
We wanted to choose this path because we wanted to be as transparent as possible. हमसे जो information चाहिए सब ले लें, कोई मसला ही नहीं.
That's not an issue.
कोई मसला नहीं है, लेकिन उसका ये भी मतलब है कि हमारी बहुत resource energy जाती है in keeping track, keeping records, papers, documentation, everything's like to the key, right? Like so you have to So there's going to be an intense recording system as well, and a lot of operational strength goes there.
Sure, that makes sense. Yes.
Which means again हमारे overheads expand कर जाते हैं वो concerns, लेकिन because हम लोग Section 42 company हैं, because we are audited by the top four, one of the top four firms, PwC Ferguson. We have a Pakistan Center for Philanthropy, PCP की certification. So we've established all sort of ways in which we are as transparent as clean an organization as possible. So now nobody would ever have trouble in terms of questioning where the money goes, because also on top of everything else, the families speak.
Sure.
हमें कुछ करने की like हम अक्सर ना हम लोग शुरू में क्या करते थे, अपना पीछे रखते थे the KDSP name, and we talk about Down syndrome, because we would never promote the Karachi Down Syndrome Program, because we also realize कि expectations भी होती हैं, फिर लोग आएंगे और फिर हम उनकी expectations fulfill नहीं कर पाएंगे, because actual role तो ये है ना कि ये state का काम है ना.
Sure.
हमारा तो the only reason why non-profits exist in abundance in a place like Pakistan is because the state isn't pulling their weight.
Sure. That yeah.
And वो कहते हैं ना फाइनल गोल क्या है आपका, और क्या, और एक अजीब सी बात है लेकिन that we cease to exist.
Right. No, अजीब सी बात नहीं है. So one of the smartest people I've ever known, Dr. Com McNaughton, had a PhD in communications, world renowned radio journalist. He said this. He's like, the point is always to become obsolete.
Yeah.
That's the point. So the hope is you and I can sit here and hope that there is a Karachi in our future where there is no need for KDSP, where everyone just intuitively knows कि ये बच्चा है, he's just differently abled and इसको सिर्फ ये resources चाहिए होंगे, and there is nothing else.
Yeah.
There does not need to be any more jargon, any more language. कहर है, cursed है, fuck all that, right? It's just a kid, man. It's just a child,
Sure.
And yeah, no, that's not ajeeb at all. That is a good goal, yeah. To become obsolete.
Yeah.
But you're not close, unfortunately.
No. And because also, Kazi, होता ही है कि हम लोग ये budgets are just going to keep expanding. Because you'll need more and more resources. You'll need more and more help and support to make sure that you keep delivering that quality of service. More and more families are going to keep coming in. They're going to want services outside of Karachi as well. कितना कुछ करेंगे. हमें the other day we randomly got a call from Ethiopia. There's this organization in Ethiopia that works with intellectual disabilities, specifically Down syndrome. They reached out. They said हमारी capacity बढ़ा दें. और हमने गूगल किया, आपकी चीज़ निकली, हमसे बात कर लें. हमने एक कॉन्वर्सेशन की. They loved us, we loved them. We're like such nice people. Let's just हम उस वक्त हमारे पूरे plans locked in for the year, budgets locked in for the year. हम लोग कैसे करेंगे, हम लोग कुछ figure out कर लेंगे, extra time कर लेंगे, कुछ देख लेंगे. But why not? Why not?
I don't know.
Oh, by the way, that campaign, I mean, I shouldn't be promoting any specific brand specifically at all. लेकिन
Pepsi वाली.
I love it. I love the why not, Meri Jaan. It is just so beautiful, so hopeful, so young, it's so youthful.
Yes.
It's an answer, it's not a question.
It's not a question.
And it's so polite because it has Meri Jaan.
It's a Meri Jaan, and it's also polite in that so the गाना जो मुझे रैप डीमन वाला है ना, वो बहुत यंगस्टर्स का तो ऑलवेज ब्रिलियंट, बट रैप डीमन वाला बहुत अच्छा लगता है बिकॉज उसमें वही बोलता है ये है कि मैं तुमसे थोड़ा अलग is fine, मैं तुमसे थोड़ा कड़क is also fine, and it's all just good, and there's nothing, just be open to the fact that I am not the same thing as you. There's no problem there. Why not? Absolutely, why not?
Celebrate.
But also budgets are a thing. So
That's right.
But
money is a concern.
Money is a concern, and one would hope that eventually you can get some kind of pipeline from the government, right?
Yes.
And then it stops being a concern, because the kind of funds that we're talking about now, 180 million is not a small number.
It's not.
For us.
It's not.
Right? But for the government, it's not an issue, not really.
Yes.
Not really.
Yes.
And then also again, you are registered in section
42.
Section 42 company and all those things. So even the government में जो भी whoever is the person who could allocate these resources, they would also know कि यार these people are doing what they're doing.
Once they, so when you were saying कि कितना difficult है, I think अगर if people have the resources and they have a heart to give, and we get an audience with them and we talk to them about it, they actually genuinely sit down and understand. once they understand, they're all supporters of the cause, because it is so easy to understand.
It's like a yeah.
क्या होगा इससे अच्छा काम?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's I don't know if there is a better cause. I posted a story, right? But मेरे पर pressure था. Samar Naqvi were sitting right there. What am I supposed to do? Put me on the spot. But I know this is a cliched question. How much of a toll does that take on you as a person? You know, when did you get into this stuff? At what age? Or, you know, were you fresh out of your education? What was the scene?
Very good question. This is going to head, like, we're going to head into a completely different direction now.
That's what I do. Directions. Please tell me.
No, ask me a question. I will answer it as much as to the best of my ability.
Yes.
So actually, I'm the youngest of three.
Okay.
Which means that I was kind of like following a certain pattern. My eldest brother is a high achiever. And based off of that, then what ends up happening is that you know what you have to do in life, because he kind of chalked out the path for you. So I entered into like a BBA, then an MBA. I was halfway through an MBA, and that's when I started the MBA knowing that this is not something I want to do. Back then in Pakistan, when I was studying, there was...
How?
No, I'm not ancient. I'm not ancient. I'm not.
We're both millennials. Now, how could you be ancient?
I'm a millennial, yes. So...
मेरे जो ज़माना था ना, Kazi, उसमें बताइए.
I talk like this because I have an organization like where we're full of like such young people. I feel old.
But at your age, mashallah, say, heading an organization like that, that speaks volumes for the kind of person you are, mashallah, say.
And also for the sort of organization this is.
Sure. Alhamdulillah.
Because it's one thing to be young and leading an organization, but it's another thing to be recognized, and based on pure merit, you grow up the ranks.
Sure.
And being a woman.
And being a woman in Pakistan. Which I think just increases your troubles by 100%.
Casual misogyny is just everywhere. It's rampant.
छोड़ देना आप casual misogyny को mention करने की क्या ज़रूरत है? Because it needs to be called out every day. नहीं यार छोड़ो. Leave him to his own devices. When his devices are that's another.
We'll go on a tangent.
हाँ ये को direction.
So but मेरे लिए this is a really proud moment too. One, because this is an organization that recognizes, acknowledges and promotes talent more than anything else. So if you're with this, we're gonna make sure that you are recognized enough and appreciated. Absolutely.
Yes.
The other thing is that it creates a certain sort of role model for women, aspiring young girls who enter this field, the social development sector, and see where they can head towards, where they can be. It is just, it's possible, right?
Absolutely
it just becomes possible when that's there.
And not only that, I think एक और चीज़ जो propagate की जाती है for women is that they need to be more like men. They need to have masculine traits, and if not masculine traits, then they need to be insidious in some way.
Oh, I love that. I love what you said.
I think you're one of the nicest people I've met, right? So, and if you can
I retain that. So the thing is, Kazi, and it's not easy because मुझसे जो expectation होती है ना अक्सर in different spaces is to be the stereotypical CEO.
Yeah, cutthroat.
Absolute. Why aren't you arguing? Why aren't you disagreeing with? Why are you so agreeable? Why are you emotional? Oh, ये इसको समर को नहीं बिठाएंगे उनके साथ, वो तो रोना शुरू कर देगी.
रोने से क्या मसला है?
And I'm like, one, I don't think that's weak in any which way if it's being misconstrued as that. But two, अगर आ रहा है authentic है ना, आ रहा है रोना तो आ रहा है रोना. और अगर आप उनके साथ involved नहीं हो रहे हैं तो that's on you. That's your problem. But again, because I'm not loud, because I will always exercise empathy and compassion regardless of whatever's going on, and I could potentially even cry in a meeting, and that's perfectly okay.
I mean, देखो, I think it'd be a problem if you were the CEO of PepsiCo or something. फिर रोना थोड़ा कम बनता है, हमारे cats कब बिक रहे guys? But I mean, with this work, man, how could you not?
Yeah.
I mean, it just absolutely wrecks me every time I think about it. So yeah, kudos to you, Masha. But so MBA में आप कर रही थी, sorry, we were in that story.
उधर भी जाते हैं. पे organization का एक और बात कर रही हूँ. 75 people in the organization. Guess how many women?
I don't want to guess because I know it's going to put all the men to shame because hum jo hai na, how many?
So we're about 67 women in the organization. So that's 90% of the organization.
Oh, wow, dude, that's mashallah.
Women
Yeah.
in leadership roles and whatnot. It's just
Alhamdulillah.
the diversity is because of the men.
Huh.
We also have, by the way, we also have have 2 staff members who have Down syndrome. So one of our assistant teachers in our preschool has Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And one of our skills development trainee and supporter is also
That's awesome. Mashallah.
young girl with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah.
and again, women.
Of
Yeah.
course, women, dude. Of course, or kya hoga? But that's funny that you said men add the diversity. Diversity quota में यार मर्द आजा भाई.
Oh, एक दफा ये हुआ था हम लोग की like annual meeting हो रही थी. We were like having annual presentations, what the plans for the next year are, and this is the entire team sitting. And one of our board members walks in and he goes like, यार समर तुम diversity ratio बढ़ाओ यार क्या है ये men नहीं है कोटा रखो कि men को भी hire करो. I didn't have to answer. The team did.
Yeah.
They were like, is it our fault that we get hired on merit and men aren't just capable to get our positions? And it's like, okay, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, wrong room to say anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But you would hope that more men also gravitate towards good work like this because
Of course.
you know misogyny का एक और मसला ये भी होता है casual or not casual misogyny का एक और मसला ये भी होता है कि men are taught to only see value where material gain. There is no material gain here, right? But I will allow you time to actually think, not you, allow everyone else time to actually think about if there is a better cause. This is literal service of humanity. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is building, like, if you believe in the afterlife, this is building houses in heaven. This is all those things, man. This is all of it.
But it's easy, right? And also, I you know, while that might be something, I mean, personally, I don't do it because of that.
Of course.
I genuinely think I'm very selfish when I do this because it gives me joy. It gives me happiness. It gives me satisfaction. It's not about anyone else. It's not like, and I have a choice.
Of course.
I can move anywhere if I like to. If I wanted to pursue a different career, I could potentially even do that.
Yeah.
Right? My side profession is still already there.
It's a viable
as well.
one, yeah. It's a viable
so
one.
it's just, I'm just saying that it's a choice that I choose to make every day. And I've been doing that for 10 years because it really, really gives me that kind of joy, that fulfillment, that sense that what I do could potentially matter.
100% does every time, man. Think about the 1,400 families. There's 1,400 lives. At the very least, your families ki baat karo, multiply that by how many members there are. It's just super powerful.
Yeah, that's all the team.
What's it called? But MBA.
MBA.
Huh.
Acha. So halfway through my MBA is when I finally got a scholarship because यहाँ पे ना social science programs नहीं थे. जो थे वो एक आध इंस्टीट्यूशन के अंदर थे जो कि मुझे नहीं जाना था. Let's just
Karachi University.
हाँ. So हुआ ये कि and the only way I could actually study abroad was if I got a scholarship because needed funds for that, of course. So I got the Fulbright. I went to study in New York. I spent 2 years there.
You can't gloss over that casually. You got a Fulbright scholarship?
Yes, I did. And then, so New York University, I did a master's in applied psychology. And human development, social intervention to be precise, which meant, and a major in mental health, so which meant I learned psychology. I did a couple of hours practice as well. Then I also at the same time was learning how to sort of take a problem and an issue, a concern from the grassroots, and then influence a change to the point where you write a grant for it and then get a grant and then implement it. So, worked through that in those 2 years, came back and joined the social development sector in Pakistan. I started with the Aman Foundation back in 2012. Worked there a couple of years. And then I moved into this space of disability. When I actually left Aman Foundation, मुझे बड़ा अजीब सा वो भी dilemma था because, you know, going from a really big 2,000 person organization it was possibly one of the more high-paying social development organizations as well. So it was a very standard, like a good choice for a career as well if you wanted to move up there. It's a big organization, has a name, etc. Back then it did.
So what happened to it?
बहुत कुछ हुआ है ना उसके बाद.
अच्छा, let him. I did not.
नहीं, अच्छा.
But so it was a good organization back then, and then you moved. What was the dilemma?
Abhi bhi I shouldn't, like I learned a lot there. So I was within 2 years I got this offer from this really small organization called Now PDP. It was a 7-person organization, I tell you. And 2000 लोगों की organization, big, like everything going standard career, like high flyer, because आप बाहर से जब पढ़ के आते हो ना, उस ज़माने में saturate भी नहीं हुई थी market.
अब saturate
तो लगता है कि every now and like ये भी foreign corporate कोई big deal नहीं है, कोई big deal नहीं है.
But NYU still matters. So if you've studied at the NYU, that's still a big deal.
I hope so. Something.
No, but it is.
I think अब saturate हुई हुई है completely market. Anyway, so क्योंकि इतने अच्छे लोग अब involve हो गए sector के अंदर. I love it.
Of course.
इतनी beautiful. ये अब last choice नहीं है लोगों की. अब ये लोग deliberately choice बना के आ रहे हैं social development. पहले तो होता था ना कि कहीं और नौकरी नहीं मिली तो यहाँ पे आ गए, क्योंकि कोई डिग्रीज ही नहीं प्रोड्यूस. अब तो IBA की social sciences शुरू हो गया है. There's also really good institute, Habib शुरू हो गया है. So like great institutions producing great resources who we get to hire and like work with. So it's just lovely, mashallah.
Beautiful.
So I was saying कि जब वो 2000 से 7-person organization वाला difference आया था ना, उस वक्त मुझे realize हुआ कि मैं कितनी दिल है सिर्फ दिमाग साइड में. So my CEO over there, acting CEO at that point in time, he had said to me something. He said something which I think he said it for my learning. He said आप बड़ी emotional हैं, आपको ज़रा इमोशन साइड पे रखने पड़ेंगे. जब आप ये डिसीजंस ले रही होंगी, चीज़ें ले रही होंगी ना, तो आपको थोड़ा सा अपनी इमोशनल साइड कर्ब करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि आप हर बहुत जज्बाती हैं इमोशनल. क्योंकि मैं तो हर जगह ना आई वुड बी and also you know how you come blue-eyed, like you can come here and you so go like you're going to change the world,
we have to change
everything.
Pakistan. Of course I'm
and
going to change.
And you have the capability.
Of course I do. All the energy, all the optimism. I am it. I embody the spirit of optimism. ऐसा होता नहीं है लेकिन.
ऐसा नहीं होता. तो मुझे वो बात सही कर रहे थे in a way where he was trying to teach me something. But जो यहाँ पे जब मैंने नाउ PDP के प्रेसिडेंट जो हैं अमीन हशवानी, उनके साथ इंटरव्यू किया, उन्होंने मुझसे बोला आप like you know you're very emotional. I love that. That's gonna create a lot of it's gonna add to the work that you do. So exact opposite of what he had said. And उस वक्त जब उन्होंने ये बात बोली मेरे दिल पे लग गई, मैं अब तो मैं इधर ही आऊँगी,
अब तो यही आना है,
यही decision made.
That's beautiful. I think that makes sense. I don't know why that wouldn't make sense. You want to get that?
Yes, can I?
Please. Because we took that break now, I think the podcast now has been going for 1:30, which is a comfortable.
Okay.
That's not horrible as a duration. But so you made that switch from 2000 to 7. I mean, good. Up here.
And then I worked there 5 years. And after 5 years, but I found my calling, which was working with the marginalized, the disenfranchised community, specifically disabilities, I think. And that's like 3 years ago is when Ali and Farzeen, who are the founders of KDSP, I've been in talks with them for a really long time. We're friends now, but Ali is a persistent kind of person, so
yes.
he would ask me every year if I was ready to join KDSP.
Solid guy, this dude. Just like
he's winning Pride of Pakistan.
Yes, he is. Alhamdulillah.
On the 23rd of March.
That's beautiful.
So like, mashallah, all very, very, very well deserved.
Of course.
So yeah, he would ask me every year, and this year after I got married, I was like, okay, I'm ready to switch. And that's when I also, because KDSP was a natural segue from Now PDP, because it still work with disabilities, it's specific type of disabilities. And then when I started here, it was just again, this is what, a 25-person organization 3 years ago when I started. Very small-ish, compact, and we had like about 500 odd families when I started, and now we're at 1400 plus 3 years later. Love every single day.
Of course.
That's been my journey.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So two questions, in fact. Why'd you come back from New York? You could have found work there.
Couple of reasons. I'm a rule follower. So if I've been told a certain something, I'm obedient that way too. Like the Fulbright requires you to come back and serve your home country for 2 years. The amount of years that you study. People find, I probably shouldn't say this, but like,
people find loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I, of course, would never
even look for them.
Not at all. Like the idea of it, or the thought, is just giving me palpitations. So, and also because I'm the youngest of 3, and my parents were alone, and I mean, I wanted to be with my parents. I'm like very, very close to my family. Very close.
That's beautiful.
So,
those reasons.
So yeah, those reasons. Didn't realize the work here would be so wonderful.
So you weren't even thinking about all that?
No. I tried working there in New York for a little bit. So, I mean, multiple internships, and I worked there during the summer. And मैं comparison करती हूँ in hindsight, it was वो meaningful नहीं था उतना जितना ये है. Because वहाँ पे आप cog in the wheel हो ना. वहाँ पे तो systems, processes, चीज़ें बनी हुई हैं. आप बैठ के like उन्हीं को पर like you're working towards, and yeah, you get to create.
Sure.
You could change up the landscape completely.
You could. You probably are. You are, in fact.
It is just so that's kind of like a high too.
Of course, it is. It's the highest of highs, I think, to be prominent, to matter.
Yeah.
What's more?
I guess.
Yeah,
I guess.
What's more important than having
or your
meaning?
Contribution mattering.
Of
what you do matter.
It's just meaning, na?
हम नहीं matter करते ना, हम नहीं अच्छा ना पसंद करते. हम insignificant beings underplay us all the time.
Sure, I get. It's not my job to underplay you. वो आप खुद कर लें, आपके मसला है. I think you definitely matter, and I think you're doing wonderful work. And I think Ali also absolutely deserves that award. I think all the power to you. The other thing. So you said once you got married, then you switched. How was that like? From again, education, working in all these sectors, all of that stuff, and then marriage. How does that factor in?
So when I got married to my husband, we were working in the same organization.
Okay.
It was 24/7 together.
Okay.
It's not healthy. Let's just say, how inclusive education is like marriage. You have to work on it every single day, all the time. So him and I are different in one way. Actually, we're different
Just
in a lot
way.
of ways. A lot of ways. We're very different human beings. I'm a thoroughbred introvert. He's a complete extrovert. He finds energy and joy in people, engaging with people, anybody and everybody. Surface level interactions too, he's perfectly comfortable with. I can't do. I have to do deep, intense, meaningful conversations.
Of course, yeah.
I cannot interact at like that level.
Sure.
So that's one. But the other big difference was, and that kind of played into our work, was कि जो हमारे differences at work होते थे ना, arguments हो रही हैं या कोई चीज़ हो रही है, या I see something differently, deep impact and versus visibility. I would always lean towards
deep impact, obviously.
Substance, everything that is related to the back end, less shashka. And so we would normally have like disagreements, and दोनों ज़रूरी हैं. I'm not saying दोनों ज़रूरी नहीं है, but हम लोग पास arguments होती थी, and by the end of the day, he would have forgotten about the argument.
Of course.
Carry on with the day, because of course you enter into the personal space.
Yeah.
Can't let go.
Can't let go. No, but what I'm saying, my question though, I hope, was कि so this is posed to women all the time, na, कि, or I suppose this false dichotomy is established for them, ya kaam, ya shadi. How did you traverse that landscape? How did you decide that?
So it wasn't either or.
It can't be. It shouldn't be at all. But most women are led to believe that it is.
सही बात है और मुश्किल है. मैं ये नहीं कह रही आसान है. अगर मैं उस वाली space में अंदर घुसूं, तो there is a lot that you kind of have to like sideline and ignore to keep going.
Of course.
Because you see, there's there's expectations when you do get married. Lots and lots of them in this context. So I live with the in-laws, for example, and there would be unsaid, sometimes said, sometimes implied expectation would
sometimes
be
forced. Kids, man, come on now.
Kids, घर का काम, domestic सारा, meeting, greeting people, hosting, interacting with like all sorts of extended family, all of that. So that becomes slightly tricky. And I have to do a lot of that because, again, obedient, compliant. You raised as a girl, a woman in our society.
But also,
it's like it's heavy.
Also, but an absolutely empowered woman. Right, and that's I suppose why I asked that question, and what I was trying to hint at is, first off, it's a false dichotomy. It doesn't really have to be this or that. It could absolutely be both. In fact, it's supposed to be both. So is it more difficult for women than for men? Of course, it goes without saying, right? And ये patriarchy नहीं होती तो भी होता, by the way, कम होता लेकिन होता. अब क्योंकि patriarchy on top of it, cherry on top of the pie, it's even more difficult, right? But when women are or even men, young people are forced into thinking that they need to have guarantees, right, for later on in life. मतलब ये चीज़ guaranteed होनी चाहिए. This is how this should be. Are you sure कि I will get to do this versus that? You know, बहुत सारे ख़वातीन को ये परेशानी होती है कि काम करने दोगे नहीं दोगे, और बहुत सारे घराने नहीं करने देते शादी के बाद. You know, that is what I'm. Do you have like principles to traverse this plane? How does that happen? You know what I mean? Like, because you must have, I'm sure, been through all that fear.
So I don't know about that, because I feel like just the allowing somebody to work wala philosophy, that's it never even occurred to me, because it wasn't a permission that I was seeking anyways.
That's it, right? That's it, yeah. And
I come from a family, my dad specifically is possibly one of the biggest feminists that you're going to find.
Really? Okay, beautiful.
So he's all for women rights.
Yes.
Right, like and betiyan, and then all sorts of like nikah naame pe na दो चीजें होती हैं, clauses जो थोड़ा सा ऊपर नीचे होते हैं. एक तो ये होता है कि the right to divorce.
The right to divorce.
वो तो naturally कट जाता है. Like औरतों का वो
which is super interesting. No, naturally just why? What are you doing? So वो तो like my dad make sure that my sister-in-law जो मेरी भाभी हैं उनके में डले. It's like क्या करो डलवा, like, you know, you have to have this. Good.
And
very good.
Then that other clause on दूसरी शादी, वो भी permission, you can have a दूसरी शादी without permission.
Says who?
अगर आप निकाहनामे पे वो ना लिखें तो आपको ये भी करवाना होता है कि you have to take permission before you.
Of course you do. Oh my goodness. अच्छा मेरा नहीं हुआ ना, तभी मुझे शायद ये जब
tips and tricks, make sure that like डले निकाहनामे पे.
मैं बैठ के पढ़ूंगा, I'll be like, ये where's this, ये क्या हो रहा है, Allah रहम करे. But yeah, so stuff like that never occurred to you.
So like it didn't, but having said that, it wasn't something that was new, like to even, because you know, again, if you've grown up in Pakistan, you also see it happen. Ghar ke andar bhi, the roles were very clearly defined. My dad was the person who was earning the bread, and my mom was a homemaker, even though she could have been a breadwinner as well. But she chose to raise the family and like be with the in-laws. She chose. I don't know. I mean, like back then she presents it as a choice. I don't know whether it really was, because उसे सिखाया ही जाता है ना घर का ख्याल, and like making sure ससुराल के अंदर everything's in order, so, and like you're catering to everything.
Maybe it would have been a little more difficult for her because उस वक्त में it wasn't as inclusive as it is now. Organizations like this wonderful place did not exist, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But having said that,
it's easier.
It is. But having said that, I think if she understands that she had a choice, then she absolutely did. I think Viktor Frankl एक हमारे उस्ताद थे. उन्होंने एक अदद किताब लिखी, उनका नाम था Man's Search for Meaning. Actually, I never met him. He died before I was like, I don't know, 5. But he said that everything can be taken away from a person a man, woman, everything can be taken away except the most fundamental, inviolable ability to respond. So his basic theory was you always have a choice.
Nice.
Right? And that's super powerful. And
that's interesting.
And it doesn't go down easy when you're talking about atrocities, by the way, or abuse, right?
Yeah, sure.
When you don't really have, there's no good choice, na?
Sure.
Still a choice.
Sure.
You know, Allah Rahm kare. Maybe all have good choices.
Sure.
But at least that much.
Sure.
So there is at least that.
The उसके counter में एक वो जो line है ना, the illusion of free will.
The illusion of free will. यार पता है क्या? You have a session and so you have to leave. But one of my thesis in my existentialist philosophy की degree है तो the existentialism की जो segment था ना degree का उसमें one of my thesis was actually based on the religion Islam. And I tried to tie free will and determinism. So my theory is that both of them coexist. It's simply you just have to take a temporal approach because God is outside. So divine providence is a thing. Divine providence is basically divine determinism, right? But we're also told कि हमारे अमाल जो हैं वो हमारी नियत के ऊपर हमें गुनाह और सवाब मिलता है. Why would God, who is the most merciful, punish us for things that He already ordained? So then free will mustn't exist, right? That's the argument. But my counter is if you take a temporal view, if you zoom out, you understand God exists outside time. So in this, in our reality, in this space, we absolutely have a choice. You have a choice for asking for a Coke Zero. You could choose not to. But because He is all seeing and all perfect, He actually knows every choice that you could make. You could make whatever choice.
Okay.
Every choice that you could make.
Okay.
He knows all of it. So it is determined.
Right.
But you still have a choice. That's how मतलब ये पूरा paper था. अभी I've done a piss poor job.
इसके ऊपर I mean like we could talk about this because if we want to get into that.
Yeah.
इसके ऊपर बड़ा सवाल है ये because कुछ चीज़ें हैं जो for example कुरान के अंदर हैं around how Imam Hussain and the Karbala incident जो हुआ that there would be that zalim who would do this, like they would get martyred there.
Yeah.
And from all the ahadith and all the things that we've learned and read, the Prophet knew that was going to happen to his grandson.
Yeah.
If they knew there was going to be a bad guy, then the bad guy was supposed to exist.
Yes.
Then how is the bad guy going to be punished because the bad guy was put in that place?
No. But my theory stands, na. So Allah knew. Allah had, and He gave the ilm of the ghaib to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But in that moment, that bad guy could have chosen not to be bad. He had agency. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, did he have agency? Because he was supposed to be there. He's mentioned in literature. Like if he's there in Quran, if he's there in all sorts of stories, how could he not be? So how could that not happen?
So if you zoom out, right, and if you take a 2D view of all of us have either this choice or that choice, either A or B multiplied by infinity, multiplied by as many choices as we're ever going to get, right? So, divine preordainment dictates that Allah Mia knows what's going to happen. So divine preordainment basically is कि यार A or B multiplied by as many choices we're going to get, right? So Allah Mia knows what's going to happen A and B. He still gives you the choice. He knows everything, right? But He's still going to give you the choice of whether to choose A or B. That's not determined. He knows what you're going to choose. Right? But it's not determined as in you could choose either or. That's why there's a heaven or a hell. You know what I mean? I mean, again, 3-4 घंटे इस पे आराम से, सुकून से.
Yeah,
but yeah,
sure. But you end up choosing A because it's supposed to be A.
You could have chosen B.
Could you have?
Yeah, sure.
Then history would say differently.
History would say differently, sure.
But then all the just the very fact that the Prophet knew about it and was seeing all of that and treating Imam Hussain such would have been null and void.
No,
because if
देखो ना,
the bad guy chose B, not A,
But the
then
bad guy didn't choose B, na? That's the thing. The bad
हाँ
guy
तो वही
chose A.
choose करते जो choose हुआ हुआ है पहले से
He had a choice, right? And Hazrat Imam Hassan, Hazrat Imam Hussain, all of them had a choice. The Prophet had a choice. He could have interceded. He didn't, because he made a decision in keeping with his character. He sacrificed everything.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
You know, and that's why आप देखो ना, अगर आप divine preordainment, if you believe in it writ large कि हर चीज़ determined है, so then does all of their weight, the weight of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam ka sacrifice, does it lose? Like, you know, if he just had precognizance ke ye Allah Mia will save my son, then it loses the weight of his sacrifice is lost, no?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. But he didn't know.
No, he didn't know. He didn't know.
He
The
didn't know.
Prophet knew.
The Prophet
Still
knew.
did it anyway. It just adds more weight to his sacrifice, no? Because if he knew, if anyone could have interceded, it would have been him, no? He didn't, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't. Again, because we all get to choose. We all have a choice. You know, and usme zahir hai, theories of psychology come in where, you know, you have your projective identifications, you have your wo dusra kya hota hai? Obsessive compulsions, you have all those things. Understood, right? And they govern it. But at the end of the day, you still could choose. You could have chosen to work as a therapist, make lots of money here. Therapists make a lot of money. I'm not saying it's a bad profession. You could right now, with all the experience that you have, you could go and work at a multinational. You could. Are you going to? No. Based off what? Based off a choice. Alamia knows that you're not going to do that.
That's a choice I'm going to make.
That's a choice you're going to make. It's still a choice that you get to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't sound convinced, right?
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Okay.
Because I'm not doing a good job, Abhi. But the paper was quite convincing.
ठीक है, पढ़ेंगे किसी दिन. Light reading before going to bed.
Of course, light reading, determinism and divine preordainment by Kazi. Allah Reb kahega. Samar, you have to get out of here.
I do.
Because you have
yes.
a session. But this was wonderful. I hope you come back, inshallah. And I hope that everything goes well. I will put up stories and stuff. I will try to make it also to the carnival. I don't have words, like there are no words that would do justice to the work that you guys do, honestly.
Thank you. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
Come witness it too. If you can't make it to the carnival, do come to KDSP, visit.
Absolutely will.
See the space.
100%.
Talk to the people.
Will do.
Get to know more people.
Yeah, and then cry at every 5 minute interval, just Kazi ro kyun raha hai, pata nahi yaar. I'll be a mess, but I would love to come and yeah. So Instagram वगैरह शेयर कर दें. YouTube है आपका?
YouTube भी है, बिल्कुल है.
आपका अपना पर्सनल है?
नहीं, मेरा अपना पर्सनल नहीं है.
तो कौन बनाएगा?
KDSP का है.
KDSP का तो हो, but we also had to speak about next time maybe inshallah about projecting yourself as an entity. You're going to have to eventually.
When we talk about like therapy and mental health practice, perhaps.
Yeah, inshallah.
We never spoke about that.
No, you just come back whenever, dude. We talk about whatever. We'll talk about your fine pastel shalwar kameez collection.
Yes, I will choose another pastel.
You absolutely will. But Karachi Down Syndrome Program on Instagram. That's it.
That's right.
And on YouTube.
That's right. And on Facebook, where do we have a website, www.kdsp.org.pk.
Okay.
And we have our office at Share Faisal. So give us a call, come in.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome.
Inshallah. And you give me links. And there's options to donate through the website as well?
Yes. Options to donate through the website. There's campaigns that are running. You come into KDSP. Everything's welcome.
Wonderful. Perfect. Samar Naqvi, Kazi Akbar. Assalamu alaikum.